For decades, Cuba and Zimbabwe have shared a unique bond, from medical training programs that have shaped Zimbabwe's healthcare system to cultural and educational exchanges that continue to inspire solidarity between the two nations. On today's episode of the Diplomat Couch, we are honored to host Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Cuba to Zimbabwe, Suzelis Perez Mesa. Your Excellency, welcome to the Diplomat Couch.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you, Ms. Osley and Diplomat Couch, to present myself as a Cuban representative to Zimbabwe.
Can you tell us a bit of background about your diplomatic career and how you eventually got to international relations?
Yes, I could say that I will start by the end of the question. I graduated with a degree on computer engineering, so I'm an engineer from the Higher Polytechnic Institute of Cuba, Jose Antonio Echevarria. And I always say that I'm proud, an engineer, and I'm grateful for that. Immediately after, I pursued the postgraduate studies at the Diplomatic Academy, the Higher Institute for International Relations in Cuba, Raúl Roa Garcia. And after that, I began working as part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It has been my sole place of employment and my experience, professional experience, for over 16 years. I could say that my previous experience as a diplomat were in Belgium, in the Netherlands, in charge of the European institutions, the PCW. I've been also in some other countries as a short stays and for specific reasons. And I could say that all of them contributed a lot to me. And I wake up every day with the will to learn from this passionate world of international relations. In fact, I never thought I was going to be a diplomat, but the possibility appeared, and then I was thinking the great gift it could be represent my country in the international arena, so also make relations with many peoples, and those areas won't be so at my chance as an engineer. But I'm proud of that, and I could say from the very beginning that I'm here very happy in Zimbabwe, which is a sister nation, and where I have been for 9 months now.
It's a very interesting transition from engineering to diplomacy, but you said it's been a great experience. And being in Zimbabwe for the past 9 months, I'm sure you know the history between Zimbabwe and Cuba, the bilateral ties. Maybe you can share with us, particularly when it comes to healthcare and education.
Yes, of course. Our bilateral relations date back to before independence. But I will just mention just a few milestones on the history of those excellent relations. We could mention that in the April 20th of 1980, 2 days after the Independence Day, we established formally the bilateral relations. That's why we are celebrating this year the 45th anniversary. Also, we should mention year 1986 because of the visit to Harare of our Commander-in-Chief on the occasion of the 8th Summit of the Non-Alignment Movement that took place at that time here. The same year, 86, we began the cooperation programs on health and education. Since now, we should talk a bit about that later. Also, we have records of 11 visits of the founding father and former President Mugabe to Cuba in 2006 for the 14th Summit of the Non-Alignment Movement. The last time was 2016 on the occasion of passing of our Commander-in-Chief. We could move also to 2017 with the visit of Honorable Jacob Mudenda, the Speaker of the Parliament. In 2019 was also a year with many visits in both senses. From Cuba, we received the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Vice President of Cuba, a lady, Inés María Chapman, But also from here, we received in Cuba Honorable Mabel Chinomona, the President of the Senate, the Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education at that time, Professor Murguida, and also the Secretary for External Relations of the SANU-PF, Comrade Simbarache Mbengewi. Then we could move to 2024 last year. We received here our Vice President, Salvador Valdez Mesa, with the delegation. They launched the inauguration of the Fidel Castro Monument. We're proud to be and to have here in Harare. And also this year it has been very active in that area. Since January, we received in Cuba the special envoy of the President, His Excellency Menangawa, to Cuba, was the Comrade Simbarache Mbengewi. Then in March, we received here the President of the Parliament of Cuba and delegation also with him, and other members of the Secretary of the Central Committee of the party. Also in March, 2 deputy ministers from Zimbabwe came to Cuba for international events, Deputy Minister of Information, Deputy Ministers of Communication. On April, we were very honored to have in Cuba Honorable Mombe Shora, Minister of Health. And on June, also visited Cuba the CEO of the Museum of African Liberation, Ambassador Kwame Musawasi. Those could be, let's say, some milestones on the relations.
Those are very strong people-to-people diplomacy and between the two nations that have been fostered between the nation of Cuba and Zimbabwe. Going back to the education and healthcare contributions that Cuba has made to Zimbabwe's healthcare, how do you see the training of Zimbabwean medical doctors in Cuba contributing to our healthcare system, and what impact has that had on Zimbabwe's healthcare?
This is a very nice question because it places the human being in the center of the management, and it also involves healing, saving lives, and improving the quality of life of many people. I would say that the relations between Cuba and Zimbabwe, the peoples, goes beyond the concept of people-to-people diplomacy, because it is based on the solidarity, on the sincere desire of helping each other and respect for the other one. And regarding the impact of the Zimbabwean doctors graduated in Cuba, I could say that will be better addressed to the national authorities, but as a modest point of view, my modest point of view, I could say it is a very positive. I've met many of them, not only as doctors and professors, but also as a representative of ministers, ministries, entities, and with their own businesses and enterprises. So they are all contributing to their homeland, and we're happy for that, to see that they are having their life project in Zimbabwe.
Your Excellency, thank you for that. When we come back in the second segment, we continue with our conversation with the Ambassador of Cuba to Zimbabwe. Welcome back to today's episode of the Diplomat Couch. I am your host, Osli Matsikinyeri. On today's conversation, we are joined by the Cuban ambassador to Zimbabwe, Suzelis Perez Mesa. And before the break, we were talking about the history of between Cuba and Zimbabwe, where we've had a lot of our medical practitioners trained in Cuba. Your Excellency, how do you see this relationship evolving in the future, especially when it comes to dealing with pandemics that are going on globally?
I appreciate a lot your question, Osli. And I should mention that the history of the Cuban international cooperation programs has more than 60 years, so it is important to know that. And because of that, more than 605,000 of health workers have been in 165 countries During that time, we could register more than 2.2 billions of consultations performed and also more than 15 millions of surgeries and about 9 millions of people of life saved. It is easy to say that, but hard to understand for a small country like mine, but with a high sense of solidarity and a strong will to share what we have. I also would like to say that our health workers used to go to very remote locations in hard conditions, but at the same time with a great sense of humanism. So I just want to mention as an example of that international cooperation that during the COVID time, it was a hard time, you remember, and because of the requests of more than 40 countries, we sent more than 50 medical brigades to assist their people there. And also that emergency medical contingent, which is called Henry Rift, now this year they are celebrating 20 years and are internationally recognized because of the work they have done in more than 30 post-disasters and epidemic situations, like in Haiti after the earthquake with the cholera outbreaks, also in the crisis of Ebola in West Africa in 2014. So those are just few examples of the cooperation, international solidarity of Cuba with the rest of the world. Then coming back to the doctors we have had here since '86, I can tell you that now we have the brigade number 14, and since 2000 that category was stated, we have counted more than 1,000 of doctors working in Zimbabwe in different periods. Now we have a brigade that covers 9 specialties, more doctors than that, because some of them are from the same specialty, and they're working in 6 hospitals in Harare and Bulawayo. The feedback I've received from the national authorities is very positive, and also I would like to highlight that in their free time they do outreach in vulnerable communities or remote locations. Just an example of the results they have got is in the last 2 years, where they have been here since 2023, they have performed more than 61,000 of consultations and more than 2,000 of surgeries. Also, it is important to highlight the work of the biomedical engineers and electromedicine specialists in the reparation and recovering the medical equipment and the furnitures that improve the quality of the service of the hospitals where they work.
And you, earlier on, you touched on solidarity and cooperation that you've had over the years with so many other nations. And given the importance of sovereignty and non-interference in your bilateral relations, especially with Zimbabwe, how does Zimbabwe's position on lifting sanctions imposed on Cuba align with Cuba's ideals, particularly in the context of UN voting?
Yes, this is an area where Zimbabwe and Cuba have been very close. As you are aware, both countries suffers the application of unilateral coercive measures. In the recent high-level segment of the General Assembly, in its 80th session, both Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Professor Murguira, and Honorable Minister from Cuba, Bruno Rodriguez Parrilla, they also expressed their support for each country and demand the end of that measures that have a great impact on the development of the country. I could also add that during that high-level segment on the UN General Assembly, 43 countries also rejected and denounced the application from the US of the blockade against my country, Cuba, Furthermore, 19 countries also rejected the inclusion and the presence of Cuba in the U.S. list of states sponsor of terrorism, which is a measure, a dishonest measure, politically motivated, but also it's arbitrary, it's unilateral, and it has to be deleted, my country, from that spurious list. And that was the demand of those many heads of delegation at that level. Also, I could say that we highly appreciate Zimbabwe's support on this very important topic for my country, which is also shared with almost the entire international community. Last year, the resolution against that blockade was approved by 187 countries, only with the exception of Israel and US that kept isolated on that aggressive policy. I have to say that for more than 60 years, my people, the Cuban people, have been victims of that unjust policy, which also violates the international law. It also flagrantly and massively and repeatedly prevents the full realization of the human rights of my people. And also the extraterritorial impact or nature of that policy undermines the sovereignty of the countries and affects the interest of their people and their enterprises. Unfortunately, since the last administration of President Trump, but mainly this year, that government is doing their best to reinforce, to tighten the measures and the initiatives in order to try to apply all kind of measures against my country, and it has had an impact in the daily life of the Cuban people. That's why in this context we value the support not only from Zimbabwe but also from the African sisters and brothers, as it was demonstrated in the 38th session of the General Assembly of Head of States and Government of the African Union in February, where for occasion 16 they approved the resolution demanding an end to that policy and also demanding the exclusion of Cuba of that list of state sponsors of terrorism.
Finally, Your Excellency, the solidarity between our two nations is very commendable. We would like to continue that conversation when we come back in the third and final segment of the Diplomat Couch. Don't miss it. Welcome back to the third and final segment of the Diplomat Couch. If you're just joining us, today we have the pleasure of having the Ambassador of Cuba to Zimbabwe, Suzelis Perez Mesa. And before the break, we were discussing the sanctions imposed on Cuba and how Zimbabwe's role has played being in solidarity with Cuba when it comes to UN voting. And you're about to give us your third and final point.
Yes, of course. I wanted to let you know that for the 33rd occasion, Cuba will present to the General Assembly the resolution entitled "The Necessity of Ending the Economic, Commercial and Financial Blockade Imposed by U.S. against Cuba." And we're confident that it's going to be a new victory for the Cuban people and for many others around the world that share this just cause.
And can you tell us about some of the more recent cultural exchanges that have happened between the nation of Cuba and Zimbabwe?
Yes, that's a sphere where we find we need to do a lot because we're very close culturally. You're aware of the influence of Africa in the Cuban identity. So we share costumes, we share idiosyncrasy and values. So it will be easy to move forward in that way. I can tell you that we're working with the African Museum of Liberation and also with the National Archives. But as a new team, we're trying to identify new counterparts for initiatives in culture, arts, sports. So we're working on it, and we hope to have results on those noble objectives.
And you've said that you're looking for potential partners. And what other economic areas are you exploring for potential cooperation between Zimbabwe and Cuba? And how can these be implemented well?
Yes, I have to say that in terms of cooperation programs, we have also the education area, which is very important. We share what our national heroes say, that being educated is the only way to be free. That's why we decide to help many countries on that, and that's why also we have been since the 86 with professors also in Zimbabwe up to now. We have professors at the Bindura University working there, training there, also in sports. And we maintain scholarships for Zimbabweans to go to Cuba to study. Last month they went to begin the scholarship in medicine and engineering. And also as an example of those cooperation that Cuba share with the rest of the world, I could say that the Latin American School of Medicine in Cuba, in 25 years, they have graduated more than 31,000 of professionals from 122 countries, among them, of course, Zimbabweans. Then moving to the economic area, that's a priority identified for both parties and with a shared will to go forward. But also it has challenges. You can imagine, as I mentioned, the application of unilateral coercive measures, the obstacle for both of us to access the international financial system, the geographical distance. But precisely for that, we have to be more creative and resilient to look for and achieve the results we deserve and we want. In terms of bilateral relations, it could be translated into joint current projects on the biotechnology area. Also, we're working for some agreements on medicines, medical equipment, tourism. So we're moving to try to identify that. And recently, we prepared some exchange webinars among different counterparts from both sides to identify other areas of projects or business or cooperation. And we will have 2 visits very soon to Cuba to continue in that way.
You've highlighted the challenges that both nations have faced when it comes to economic cooperation, but a promising area is agriculture. Can you elaborate on the potential benefits that of leveraging Cuba's expertise that Zimbabwe can get, especially considering Zimbabwe's fertile land and very good agricultural climate?
Yes, also that's a very interesting area, and we need it a lot. We are aware of the enormous potential of Zimbabwe in agriculture, as it's well known. And this is an area that could feed a lot our bilateral relations, action-oriented and focused on initiatives that could benefit both parties. So, and Cuba also needs that from you. You have a great experience on that, and we can learn and share with you the best practices. And we're working on a legal framework or an agreement on that area between the ministers of agriculture.
And looking ahead, how do you see the bilateral relations between Cuba and Zimbabwe evolving, especially in the areas that we've mentioned, education, economic, and healthcare? How do you see our relationship evolving?
Yes, I always like to think in a positive way for the future. So I envision, first of all, the unwavering support from each country in everything we need from the other one. I also hope that for the new generations to get a greater understanding of Cuba and Zimbabwe in both countries, always accompanied by the ones that let us get this point. So we cannot forget where we come from, and that's also important. I also see that the solidarity never ceases, on the contrary, renews, grows, and springs from the hurt. That's the best way to face the challenges. Also, I'm sure that our doctors and professors will continue sharing with the Zimbabwean people their knowledge and also their love. And finally, I think we could get some concrete results as a part of the negotiation, the instruments we are trying to negotiate, with some economic and social impact for the benefit of our two people.
And as a parting shot to our guests, what message can you give, especially about the importance of bilateral relations between Cuba and Zimbabwe?
I could summarize that with an idea I always said, and it's that Cuba has African blood, and Africa shares Cuban blood. It means a lot, and it's priceless. Finally, I would say that Cuba wishes the best for Zimbabwe. Cuba supports that, and that's more than enough reason to continue on the path hand in hand.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for joining us on the Diplomat Couch.
Thank you so much. It has been a very nice interview.
And to our guests, I hope this episode has been informative and as entertaining as can be. Thank you for joining us.